Okay, hello everyone. How are we all? Okay, perfect. Right, can I just check that everyone can hear me? Hi Tom, how are you? How are we all doing? Loud and clear. Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Barry. That's perfect. Okay, I suppose the next question I'm going to ask is, I'm just wondering where everybody's watching now. There's a good few on Facebook, sorry, on YouTube, which is great, but I'm just wondering if anybody has managed to tune in on our Facebook group. Hi Kathy, no, you're not in the wrong place, you're with us. I can see that you're here. Actually, Kathy, you're on Facebook. Whereabouts are you watching? Are you watching in the group, or are you perhaps watching on Lisa's channel? I'd be interested to know. Oh, hi Tina, how are you? Hi Helen. See how long they all leave you alone this morning. Have you gone and hidden somewhere, Tom? Put you out of office on for a little bit. Hi Donna, you're on Facebook. Donna, are you in the Facebook group? Only reason I asked because there's been a few technical changes, I should say. Oh, you can see me on Facebook as well, can you, Mum? Are you on the Crafting with Lisa Horton Facebook, Mum and Helen? If you are, then I know that I've done something right. I had to press an extra button this morning, that's all, just to check that. Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Lorraine, Donna Natalia, and a few more in the group. Oh, perfect. Oh, looks like we've got this sussed. No worries. As I say, the only reason I asked, because although we usually broadcast straight to YouTube, which is no problem at all, and to Lisa's channel, and or both to Lisa's personal channel and her Facebook page as well. But for some reason, there was some technical issues that stopped us broadcasting straight to the group, but it looks like we've got that sorted. Hello, Mavis. Oh, hi. Diana from Pittsburgh in the USA. That's lovely to have you all here today. Oh, lots of you on. Perfect. Okie dokie. Now I'm all present and I'm all in the right place and you can all hear me and things. We'll get going, shall we? So this is the card I was going to make for you today. Now I've had a bit of a play because, as promised, I'm going to use the layering stencils and the embossing folder for the heart stripes. Now this is a set I've had not for too long actually, but I hadn't actually opened it. I thought I'd used it, but it wasn't until I came to looking through my stash I realised I hadn't used it. So that's a great one for me because I can get through all the bits and pieces that I do have and I can use them. Also, what I'm using today that I didn't tell you about because I couldn't make up my mind yesterday was the tea rose. Now I've chosen this because there's lots of open areas on this design, and there'll be lots of there'll be techniques that I'm using today that you'll be able to transfer to layering stencils that you have in your stash. And when you have a little bit more time to play, that will be great for you to have a go at that, and I will do as well. But I wanted to use a larger stencil today and a larger design just to show you what I'm doing. And alongside all of these things, I'm actually playing with the explosion powders. Now I only got these yesterday lunchtime, so I really haven't had very much time at all. I couldn't really sit and play yesterday afternoon because I had bits and pieces to go off and do. So it's really been sort of this morning. So I haven't had a massive play. So I'll be learning alongside with you. But there's a few bits and techniques that I had in my mind that I wanted to try when they arrived. So that's what I've managed to do today. So a lot of the colour on this card today is actually with the explosion powders. And what I wanted to do, and that when I use them again in other lives coming up, I'll try and match colours with the inks as well. Now everybody's going to use these in different ways. Everybody's going to have their favourite approach and their favourite techniques on how the explosion powders work. Say initially I've only had them for today, so I really wanted to pair them with some inks that matched really well, and you can see that I've sort of done that here. And as and when I find those combinations, if I don't, I'll try and bring them to lives with you in various projects as we go along. So I'll share those combinations if that is any help to you as well. So you can see on the side there the list of things that I'm using. So alongside the two main focal points, I've got the accessories, but no less important sets. We have the nested essential stitched rectangles. Now apologies, I haven't actually checked if these are on actually in stock or not. I have a feeling these ones are, but the sentiment that I've used from these, there's a chance that these aren't. But let's say everything I do, you can swap in the sentiments that you have in your own stash anyway. So the ones I'm using today are the double layered sentiments. It's the huge set actually. It's pretty much an A4 package. It's the craft stamps, and you have the companion dies, so you can stamp your sentiment, die cut that out, and then you have a second die per sentiment to cut out a layering effect as well. And that's what you can see from this sentiment here. I've stamped it out on white cardstock, then I've created the background with the explosion powders to give me a little bit of colour for the background. Now I did have a sentiment and I couldn't make up my mind whether I like this one or not, but here I've actually used the explosion powders in the background and stamped on top of them also. So that could have gone on there as well, and I think that one does work just as well actually, the blue and the green. Okay, so we put those to one side. Now the colours that I'm using here are a very me set of colours, aren't they? Of course Woodland Moss always has to sneak in, but the Margarita, Juicy Pineapple and Surf's Up. Now the reason I chose those is because basically these two colours work so well with the apple green explosion powder. Now I'll tell you the colours, but the packaging really does not sort of prepare you for the colours that are going to come out of this this sort of little bottle of magic, really. And then I've chosen a second explosion powder, which is the Teal Waters, and that's what gives you this lovely teal colour for the background. So for the background here and on the flower also, I've used apple green, and for the sentiment here I've used the explosion powders. Now it could be at some stage, whether it be myself or Lisa or Natalia or someone else in the group, we'll try and sort of swatch things up a little bit, so if you don't have them, you can see exactly how the colours look, because they're sold in 2 sets on Lisa's website. I think there's, let me think, there's 14 powders. They're sold in sets of 7. So obviously you're going to want to choose the colours, your favourite colours. So we will try and swatch those up as we go along, as the design team have more time to play with them. Right, so let's get going, shall we? Okie doke. So I'm going to bring in, well, that camera's really gone bright again, isn't it? Let me see, right, let me just turn that brightness down a little bit. There we are. I really want you to see the true colours of what we're doing here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly show you the colours on the slide there. So now it's really useful, and that sometimes you can take a screenshot of that, so you have that as your reference. I'll just put that way, just so to make sure those words are the right way around. This is Lisa's. I've had this for years. Okay, so now you have those colours on the side. I'm going to turn that slide off, so I've got plenty of space, and I can turn your comments back on. Okie dokie. So I'm just going to leave that there. Now everyone's going to have their preference when they're using these explosion powders on their way that they want to use it and the type of effect that they want to achieve from that. So the colour that you can achieve from these, and actually I'm going to get myself another piece of cardstock actually, because this is the one that I'm going to use, and I'm going to do the final effect on, but I want to show you that how the colours sort of really appear. Now the colour that comes out of these, if you want to make the most of the colour, is absolutely stunning. They're in little shakers, like Lisa has been saying. So I'm going to start off with the apple green, and you tap a tiny amount on. Now what you don't need to do is you don't need to shake the pots before you open them up at all, because the powder is loose on the inside. What you don't want to do is shake them up. Then when you take the lid off, you do risk sort of a little cloud of powder coming out, which say is not necessary. So I've put that is actually quite a lot of powder there. And I'm just going to zoom you in actually. Okay, so you can actually see, oopsie daisies, that's probably a little bit too far. Let's come out one, shall we? There we go. So that's quite a lot of powder on there, so we're going to get an awful lot of colour out of this. Now I am using the apple green. You'll notice, and I was quite shocked at this, that the powder is orange, but I went with it. Obviously don't question. So I've got my water, and this is a new spray bottle from Lisa also. You spray this on, and look at that, straight away the orange goes, and you get a huge amount of colour there, and you can see the colours that are coming out. Actually you see the yellow and the turquoise and the blue. That, oopsie daisies, that's not, I do apologise now, I'm incredibly clumsy today, so possibly using ink is not the best thing. I'm going to go out later, I'm going to take Stephen climbing. My hands are going to be like a rainbow. Okay, so that's the apple green. Let's just write that there for you. So I'm just going to show you the colour on the other side. So this will be the Teal Waters. I had to try these first. These, just on by names alone, the teal would be my favourite to go to. So that is a brown powder. Put that colour on, and then you get that explosion of teal, but you get the darkness there, which is almost black, but you have those little black spots coming out, and you have the teal and the turquoise. There is actually a little bit of yellow in there as well. So that is something to look at when you're choosing your colours, ink colours, to correspond with what is in there. Now that obviously is a really intense amount of colour. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a little bit more of the powder on. And it's so easy to put too much powder on here, but there's always a workaround. I'm going to put the apple green as well. And I'm going to show you how, with a little bit more control, the colours that are in the powders here. So I'm going to take a paintbrush. I've got a jug of water along to the side there, and I'm going to keep it over there so I don't knock it down. So I'm just taking a paintbrush, and I'm going to just eke out those colours for you so you can see. There we go. So I'm a paintbrush, and I'm just going to use the paintbrush, and I'm just going to swipe that down like that. And that way you can actually have a little bit more control, but you can see the colours that are coming out. You still get that intensity if you add a lot of water, but you also get the texture because some of the powder granules won't dissolve, so they leave little bits of texture in there, which again I think is a really nice look. You're going with a mixed media effect on this, so if you want a completely smooth blend, then obviously add more water, and you can really blend those colours out, and you get that really nice watercolour effect. And you can see as we're going towards sort of the outer edges there, you can get a really a much paler, less intense colour, or you can keep the colours like this and you can see the sort of the colours, sort of the striations. And I'll do the same for you with the teal waters as well. I'm just taking a little bit more water. Now this colour is so intense, it really is, but you can see greens, you can see like real dark pine greens in there, Christmassy greens. You can also see the turquoises, the teals, that then it go lighter. You get all the other colours in between. Obviously when the powder isn't dispersed by the water, then that remains black. And if I just add a little bit more water, then you can really eke that colour out on the side there, and you've got such a stunning colour. Lovely, 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 lovely colour. And you can see how those two work well together actually, because there are elements of the same colour in both powders, which is why I've paired those two together. And also you can see why I've chosen the two ink colours that I have. So I'm just going to put the surface up along to the side there. Also, I think what would work well with this is the deep ocean and also the natural turquoise. So that's entirely up to you. It just depends on the project that you want to do really. And if you're familiar with Lisa's inks, you pretty much know without me showing you that this is Margarita, and you can even see that on the ink pad there. So I'm going to add those there, so you can see sort of how those colours work and how that colour palette works. And it's a really nice way to play. There's lots of different colours. I mean, I've swatched just a few, and I could go on forever like this. I've done the we have a yellow explosion powder here, which you can see works so well with the juicy pineapple. Let me just show you that quickly while I'm here. Just put that on the side. So if you're wanting to know if there are inks that coordinate, I mean, these aren't sort of made to match, but you make them coordinate, and you know how to adjust the intensity of the inks there also. So that gives you a really good idea of how you can play with your colours, and if you're wanting to mix and match with the inks and whatever, then you can do this. Now, what I've been doing this on at the moment, because I was using a lot of water, this is on a mixed media cardstock. So it's like watercolour card. I don't have watercolour card sort of as such, but their mixed media works just as well. And this is a textured card. It's really heavy, so it takes that water really well. So if I just show you there, as these areas dry, you can see how the colours sort of separate, and these aren't sparkly, by the way, either, and that was one of the questions I had for myself too. These particular two colours aren't. There are powders in the collection with mica in them, and I'll come on to those another time. So these are this is on mixed media card. What I'm going to do, I've done this a little bit earlier on, so this is completely dry. So I'm just going to have a little play now and just see. You can actually reactivate that colour by spraying more ink on it. And you can see how that colour has been reactivated there. So these are very water reactive pigments. And you can see that although these were brush marks on there, just by adding water, that pigment's been reignited, I suppose, and then you can still go on and create different textures from that also. What you could do, I'm just going to get myself a cloth. Now that I've done this, you could actually add texture to this by mopping up some of that colour, and then you can get a really sort of a pastel look on there. You can take away a lot of that intensity, but it gives you a completely different look. So don't be, if you're not someone who likes such intense colour, you can really sort of make these a pastel shade. There's so much to play with. Right, and that's before I've sort of shown you anything on any techniques actually. So yeah, we can do so much with these powders. But I think what I also want to tell you today is to make this card, I'm actually using Lisa's super smooth cardstock. Now, if you wanted to add lots and lots of water, like I have done on any of this, then I really would recommend watercolor cardstock or a mixed media cardstock, something that is well able to take a lot of water. Now, Lisa's cardstock isn't designed for that. It's designed for something else completely. So it really doesn't take to an awful lot sort of heavy use of water. But having said that, what I want to do is use the brush technique. So you can see what I've done here in the background. We've got that brush technique. You can see all those individual colours. And you use such little water on this that Lisa's cardstock is able to take that. So that's what I wanted to show you today. So what I'm going to do to create this background, now that you've seen me sort of do that before, I'm going to use some of the apple green. Now I've got colour all over my hands. There we go. Right, so I'm going to take a little bit of this powder, and it really is a case of less is more. Just because there's hardly anything on the page, don't be, unless you want a really intense colour, don't be tempted to add more. Even just a tiniest little speck, and it really is a case of sort of being so gentle. Oh, there we are. So I'm going to add my colour on both ends there. So it's the tiniest little amount really. I'm going to bring you back in just one, because that seems to, there we are. Now what I'm going to do, I'm using Lisa's set of brushes that she brought out to us a long time ago, and I'm using this brush mainly because of the width of the bristles there, because I want to drag this colour down. So what I'm going to do now, I've got my water here. It's actually green because I've been using it all morning. I think what I might do, I'd bring in my mat here. I'm going to put some water on here. I'm going to show you, I'm not going to saturate the whole brush mainly because, as I say, Lisa's cardstock, the super smooth, can't cope with too much water. But I'm just going to dip the ends in the water of this brush, and that's blue, that's all right. And I'm just going to drag that colour down, and I'm just going to carry on doing that gently till I've got the nice effect on my page that I'm after. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more ink, and because this is a really sort of thin brush, actually it's not going to give me too much water or too much moisture on there, so I'm going to just use that. Now I'm going to leave that at that. Now the beauty of these explosion powders is every single time you use them you're going to get a different look. Even if I done this technique on 5 different pieces of cardstock, they'd all look different. They really would. Now I don't want to do too much more of that because I do want to do some stenciling on the top. Now, because I've used such little water as well, this really isn't saturated at all. Let me just, oh, I don't know why these colours blow out so much. There we are. Let me just, oh, there it is. I'm just going to put that there. Oh, the microphone's in the way. There we are. I think that's there we are. You can see the colour a little bit more now. Yeah, it was really bleaching that out, wasn't it? Okay, so yeah, this piece now, it's more or less dry, so it's absolutely fine for me to stencil onto. So I'm going to bring my alternate in. So the first stenciling I'm going to do is with the heart stripes. Now you know me, I do like my tone on tone colorways. So as this is going to be the background, it's quite a stunning background for me, or quite a bright background for me in the first place. So I'm just going to add some texture onto this using the heart stripe stencils. Now in this set we have 3 stencils. We have the open hearts, see there, then you have all the detail that then goes into them after that. So I'm not going to use this larger stencil. Now this set is, you could use each one of these stencils individually as standalone pieces. You don't have to use them all together. So I'm not using the first stencil, but I am using the ones after that. So I'm just going to line up my page so I know that's going to stay put. Now I suppose in theory I should use the tacky mat to keep this in place, but it's just going to be a background and I'm not too worried about that moving. So I'm going to use my stencil brush and I'm just going to go all over here and add some detail, some texture into the background of these explosion powders, like so. So I'm using the margarita because it layers so well over the top of the apple green explosion powder, like so. So this is really going to be really in your face when you sort of, not a really bold stenciling technique, but say it is tonal and it will add just something into the background of this. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got all of that covered. And because it is a background, it doesn't necessarily need to be a super smooth blend all over. We do just want to make sure we add that colour down. So when I take that away, you can see that there sitting in the background and it adds just a little bit of something. So I'm going to put the next stencil down, and this is where I'm going to come in with the surfs up. So again, I'm going to use my blending brush and just add the stripes to the hearts as the name suggests. And again, it doesn't matter if you don't get a super smooth blend. In fact, if the blend is a little bit uneven all the way across, I think it actually adds really nicely to the background. And so remember that the stencils for this particular set, each one of them could be used individually. I mean, they look amazing together and a really unusual and a lovely background, but I reckon they could all be used individually as well if you wanted to create just a stenciled or a layered background. So you can see that there in the background. Now I can see that better than you actually, so let me just, yeah, you can see that turn out. What you could also do is use the interference ink, so you have that element of mica sitting on top of there. That would really make that design pop also. So we can stencil this. No, we can't. We've embossed this now. So what we need to do, this may take, oh, there we are. Take a little bit more time to line up because obviously I'm not using an A5 sheet of card to emboss. So I just want to make sure that I have the right areas to emboss. And I'm just lining it up with the stripes that are in the centre of the hearts there. And now I'm working on that piece of cardstock and it is completely dry. So there's, oh, so there's no worry at all. And actually, if you've perhaps used a little bit more water than originally planned and the cardstock has warped a little bit, what you'll find is by the time that you've run it through the embossing machine with the embossing folder, that it will flatten that out for you anyway. So you can see, you'll see on the reverse that I have actually embossed that, and you can, there we are, you can see we have that texture in the background. Now it's quite an unusual, quite a bold background for me to be using. I know lots of you like to use your bold designs, so it'd be a really great thing for you to try. And that can be layered onto my matte layer a little bit later on. Now both of these mats, have been die cut from the that rectangle die set that I showed you at the beginning. Now you could actually layer onto more explosion powders, but I've just laid that onto the grey like so, ready to go onto the back of the card. So I'm going to do some stenciling, get some stenciling done for the tea rose now, and I will be using the powders as I go along on that too. So I shall stencil onto Lisa's Super Smooth again. So the layering tea rose, it's a lovely design actually. It's an A6 stencil set or A6 collection, but it's so, the flower on it is so large that it, by the time you sort of stencil the flower and die cut it out, it appears to be larger than A6. It's a really lovely stencil. So the first layers are with the leaves. So I'm going to do these in Woodland Moss. Now, when I've done them on here, I actually stenciled them with the Margarita to start with, but I think I just want to go that little bit darker. So I'm going to come in with the Woodland Moss to put a base in of that, and then I shall go over the top actually with some Margarita also, just so as we can have that real vibrant green going on. But the base of the Woodland Moss will just add some depth for us, I think. So that's Woodland Moss to start with, and now I shall come in with some Margarita, and that will just lighten that up and just bring it into the whole theme of the rest of the card there. So I think what I might do is use my stencil brush. There we are, we can actually get the colour going on a lot darker that way. Now what I'm going to do, we're running out of space on the screen here, I'm going to bring back in my blending mat here. Can you see that there? Yeah. And I think before I carry on, I'm just going to clean. Just going to give this a clean so we can start afresh. Actually, you can see on there just by spraying the water again that you really do reignite those colours. You'd be able to reignite them as many times as you want. If you were making backgrounds and you wasn't quite happy with what you'd created, you can always spray more water on. So what I'm going to do, make sure I get the right powder. So the apple green, tiny bit of the apple green on there, really don't need much at all. I'm going to give that a spray. And that was just one tiny little spray of water there. And then I'm going to use a blending tool with just a normal blending sponge on the bottom. If you do this, you may want to use a new sponge per colour, but don't use it for any of your inks or anything, just use it for this technique. And what I'm just going to do, I'm going to perhaps put another spray of water on the side, keep that clean so I can just pick up a bit more moisture. And I'm just going to dip that into the explosion powders there, and I'm just going to sort of pounce into the stencil there. Now what you don't want is to have this absolutely saturated, so you can either take the rest off onto your blending mat or onto a microfiber cloth that you're working onto, and then just make sure you check how much moisture is on the sponge by putting it onto the stencil material first before coming into the aperture, because what you don't want to do is flood the aperture, because then the water will seep underneath and then you'll just lose a little bit of clarity of what you've stamped. But by doing that, you are sort of reigniting the water properties of the inks and adding some details from the explosion powders as well. So really sort of go gently with this. Now I've just picked up a little bit more because you saw a little bit of darker powder sort of pigment sitting here, and I wanted that on my sponge, so I've just gone back in and picked that up, and I'm just dabbing that into the leaves there, so we are adding a little bit of texture. So when I take that away, and you can see on my leaves there that we have that little bit of texture going on from the explosion powder. So that is how you're going to get the coordination from what you're stamping with your main image and your background here. Now you don't have to have the background, you may just want to transfer the colour from the powders into your stamped image, and it's something actually that I'm going to practice, and it's something that going forward you may see me do quite a lot, because hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be a really nice effect on the flowers. Now the other reason why you don't want to add too much water from here going in through to your stenciled image is because you obviously do need to carry on stenciling, and you don't want to affect your other layers unless you have the time to wait. Now I want to create a white flower, or the basis of a white flower here, so I'm not going to stencil the majority of this area, but what I will do is come in with my margarita and just go really lightly around the outside, just so as we know where the boundaries of the flowers are, and that will give us the illusion of a white flower. And it's something I do like to do, actually. I like white roses, and I've done this on various stamps that I've used and other stenciled images. I think there's an anemone stencil which I really love to do this on as well. I haven't done it with a tea rose yet, so this is a good way to experiment. So just around the outside there, and to you that it looks like there's nothing on there, but when I take that away, You can just about see, oh, that light really does, there you go, you can just about see the outline there. Now I think what I might do, I'm going to do exactly the same as I've done with the leaves, and I'm going to come back in with my sponge, which is still wet enough actually. Yeah, and I'm going to add a little bit of colour just around the base of that flower. It's going to add a little bit of texture and a little bit of extra colour, and it really, I'm using such a small amount compared to the amount of colour that we have in those bottles. It's such a small amount, but effective. So I'm going, it's adding texture, as I say. There we are, and you can see that detail coming in. You see that? Yes, you can, just about. So that is the basis of how we're going to build up each of these layers. Start with your inks first. You can then adjust the colour as you go. So I'm just, this is stencil number 3. So again, I'm coming in with a bit of margarita. So really lightly. It's still going to give the illusion of a white flower, but it's going to add all those petal details in on the inside. So I really don't need to use too much at all. So hopefully you can actually see this going. I really do need to play with my camera settings so that the brightness doesn't blow out the colour too much. So I'm just putting the details on the leaves with some woodland moss, and I will come back in again and just work into the area. I'm picking up the rest of the colour that's on my blending mat here. I don't want to go too heavy at this stage, and I'm just working that through again into the stencil. There's hardly any moisture on my sponge, so none of that detail is going to sort of bleed out underneath. And once I've patted that in, which gives me that mottled texture, I'm just going to use my circular motions as I would do blending just on the bottom section of the flower, just to add some shadowing and some shading. Now you would otherwise do that with your blending inks, but doing that with the explosion powders or the pigment from that sort of works really well. It keeps that really soft. So again, this is stencil number 4. We still have the details of the flower to add, so I'm going to be really gentle again with margarita, and just come into all those areas just so as we can get the hint of colour. I'm just going to check. This is the last of these bloom stencils. Okay, so I've gone in with my margarita. What I'm going to do now is come in with my paintbrush. Now I used this earlier on. I had blue on it, so I'm going to take the blue off. I'm going to put a tiny bit more powder down here because I've used pretty much majority of what I've got going on here before. So I'm going to add a tiny amount of powder here. Still gets me that it's orange. Right, I'm actually going to add some more water up here, so I've got that to dip into. Activate the colour, and you can see the intensity of the colour that I've got there. And I am going to make sure that I just take off that. So I'm going to take it off the edge here. I'm not using this bit of cardstock, and you can see how much colour there is. So I'm just going to work that until I've got a really nice pale area, and I'm just going to work that into the bottom of the flower. So it's going to be a lot darker than what I've used before, but it is going to add that ultimate sort of shadowing initially. So this is going to give it a real watercolour feel. So I'm just going to come around in all the details here and just work that in. And actually, as I move up the flower here, I've actually taken off a lot of the water. So this actually, I'm not a very good painter. I can work with inks. I'm quite happy with inks and blending, but actually sort of paint and paintbrushes sort of does scare me a little bit. But by working into a stencil this way, it takes all the guesswork of where the shadowing needs to be, and when you take away that off, take the stencil away, it gives you a watercolor effect. So again, that's not too wet because I've used a minimal amount of water. And what I'm going to do, stencil 5, I'm just going to add what I might have left on my paintbrush through those details. And again, you're using minimum amount of water, so Lisa's cardstock can actually take this. You wouldn't want to be using too much more moisture really, because what you'll find will happen is that the super smooth cardstock would pill, and it doesn't take kindly to that, but just a tiny amount works really, really well. And if it does warp a little bit, remember that we are die cutting and embossing after this. So I've added a few details in there. So we've pretty much come to the end of the stencil here. We just need to fill in the centre. So the centre of the flower, go back to my inks. So Juicy Pineapple for the centre of the flower. Like so. And then the detailing, I'm going to use woodland moss. Now the packaging of this flower is obviously pink, and there are pink explosion powders. So if you wanted to swap all of these colours and go with a pink theme, I think that would work equally as well. So you can see how flower has come out here. Possibly a little bit more green than I would have wanted, and a little bit more green than the one that would work here. We stenciled here, but that's the beauty of the way that you craft, isn't it? Say something, each thing that you do works out different each time. But you can see also that there's no pilling really of Lisa's cardstock here. There's not too much warping, if actually hardly any warping at all, to be honest. So it shows you just how little water that I've used on this, and I've still been able to get really nice effects. So what we can do now, I'm going to die cut this. So if you bear with me 2 ticks, I'm just going to go to the die cutting machine. Okay, so we have that done now, and it's amazing how different it looks once it's been die cut. There we go, I can show you the colours there. Now we can emboss this as well. As I say, I'm doing this in real time, and this paper isn't wet at all. So, but we've used minimal amount of powders. Now, what I will do over the coming lives, I'll be using the explosion powders in perhaps more of the way that you're more familiar with, and just try and come up with different techniques for you, really, just and showcase a lot of the different colours that there are, different ways of using them. Yeah, just to, and if you have any ideas of yourself also, I'd love to see them in the group, because different people are going to have so many different ways of using them. Okay. wonder why that's so bright. If we take that out of there, there we go, we can see there's the colours there, you can see that. Can't see the embossing. I'm wondering if I just need to just close this blind a little bit. It takes a bit of the glare off that way, doesn't it? No. There we go. Really lovely colour actually. Let me get a card. So we can put this on our card blank. Again, I'm working onto a square card, so although I've used rectangle dies, you really can make them work onto a square card for you as well. So we have a square card blank. We have our background, nice and vibrant in the green. We can layer our green flower onto the top of that, and then we can add our sentiment onto there as well. Now, a way to add the colour into the background on these sentiments here, I'm just going to use the piece that I've already die cut from and find my powder. So okay, with the Teal Waters powder, I'm going to just sprinkle a bit of colour on. Now, if you're worried about adding too much colour on to your cardstock initially, what you could do is sprinkle the colour onto your mat on the side here, and then take the colour from the mat onto your cardstock and do it that way. So we can add the colour down like this, so it's a lot more intense. So I've added a lot of water this time. This is going to be a background, so we do want this to stand out. I've just picked up a little bit more water so I can just spread that pigment a little bit further, because I want to cut the matten layer for this sentiment here. So we just need to come down to the side again a little bit more. Just create an area that I can die cut and is big enough for that sentiment. So I can get my okay, I can get my dies for this. There we are. Make sure I've got the right one. Yes, that's the one we want to use. Now, obviously, before we die cut this, we do want to make sure that it's dry. So you can either take your heat gun to that, just to dry that off, or we can just dab that dry. And yeah, it doesn't take too long to dry at all, to be fair. So I can die cut this. I'm just going to snip those out of there. Move my fingers out of the way. Now I wonder, is that going to fit through on my small? No, it's not. Not going to fit on my small die cutting machine, so I'm just going to cut this on my bigger one. Okay, so we have that die cut like so, and we can now layer our sentiment onto that. So although you can't see the colour on there, although we have quite an intense colour on there, it really is just a very small border by the time we add the sentiment on there as well. Sort of glue out. Okay. So we can layer those up. And what this teal will do, it will really pick out those blue streaks that we have on our background here. So we can layer that like so. And then I think before we, see, I'm very clumsy today, before we add our flower onto there, what I want to do is just matte and layer the flower so we have a bit of a shadow around there. And to do that, I've used the same die as I used to cut out the flower. And I've cut out 2 layers just in grey. Now, although these layers are the same size as the flower, if you just offset them, and if I do that against a white background, if you offset them, one at the top, you can see the shadow there, and then use the second one to shadow the bottom, you basically have there we go, you're able to create the shadow top and bottom there. Let's just make that a little bit bigger so you can see. So you create that shadow effect just by using 2 die cuts behind and just offsetting them to the flower. So it's not an exact matte and layer, but I think it works perfectly well. So when we put that against the background, it really does make that stand out, and then we can add our sentiment onto the top like that. Okay, perhaps tuck that in a little bit there. So there we are, we have had two backgrounds made in exactly the same way. They both look completely different, so I think that's the fun that you're going to have with the explosion powders. No 2 projects will ever turn out the same. But I think you can have an awful lot of fun. There's, say, a couple of different ways to use your explosion powders here. There's going to be so many different ways that you can use them, and there's, say, over the coming weeks and the coming months, you'll see yourselves using them, and also the design team, I'm sure, will be bringing them into different designs with all the other collections that Lisa's has brought out and are due to bring out as well. So I hope you enjoyed that today. Hopefully I've given you a bit of an insight and a bit of confidence to go ahead and use them. There's lots who joined, actually. There's a lot of you joined since I've started. So there's, who was that there from Hawaii? Oh, I saw that just a second ago. Thank you for joining in. It was lovely to see you. Let me, oh, I missed your name. And I can't scroll back now. Who was that from Hawaii? Oh, there's Karen's watching from Mallorca. Oh, we have a very international collection of people today. That's lovely. There's, oh, Penny from Alabama. I'm actually fascinated that there's so many watching, so many of you watching from all the different places. It's amazing what we can do on Facebook, isn't it? Or technology, and YouTube as well. So I should go back and actually check on and read all the comments, actually. Yeah, so thanks so much for joining in, everybody. I shall be back with you on Thursday. I shall probably try and use the explosion powders again with a different set and a different way of using them. So take care, everyone, and I shall see you Thursday. Thank you.